Hey everyone, Buds and Nick here. I'm here with Alexander Savetsky. Thank you, Alex, for being here. I
Thanks,
just kind of
Nick.
want to introduce everyone to you. I found you on LinkedIn, saw the projects that you're currently working on, the Bitcoin Times, Satoshi AI. We're going to get into those a little bit later on. I see that you're a prominent character into the whole crypto Web3 space and now even AI space as now things are evolving in the whole market. I just want to kind of let you be in my audience and my space to kind of look into the things that you're creating and what things you may bring into our perspective.
Yeah,
So,
sounds
if you
good.
don't mind introducing yourself a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Norris. I mean, I'm most people I think know me more on Twitter than anywhere else, actually. I think I've got a pretty sizable LinkedIn following, but I'm not really active on there. So I think you're the first person who's actually reached out to me on LinkedIn for a podcast, which is interesting. Um, but yeah, I think most people know me from my writings and stuff like that. I wrote a book called The Uncommunist Manifesto a couple of years ago, and that got me on like Alex Jones and all sorts of stuff, which was interesting going to the InfoWars uh, office and things like that. So that's where I'm mostly known, but I've had more of an entrepreneurial background. So I've built businesses more than anything else, and my early foray into Bitcoin was building Australia's first Bitcoin dollar cost averaging app called Amber. And it was like, I mean, these days, there's Swan and River and all this sort of stuff in the US, but we were sort of the original, link your bank account and dollar cost average into Bitcoin. So no trading, no fucking around, none of that stuff. It's just like treat Bitcoin as a savings instrument and put aside a little bit on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, whatever is comfortable for you. So I built that for a number of years. I exited a couple of years ago. That's when I wrote Uncommunist, and that's when I started actually putting the Bitcoin Times as well, which is like it's kind of like a journal. I don't know what else to call it. It's not a magazine. It's like a journal slash publication that's done once a year. And I bring together some of the best thinkers in the space. Like, we did the Austrian edition a couple of years ago, which had Pierre Richard, Michael Goldstein, Seyfedin Ammous, etc. Write a dedicated piece for it. So yeah, I do that sort of once a year, and then my primary project recently has been down the AI rabbit hole, which is specifically the Spirit of Satoshi AI, and that is a language model that is how can I say it's contrary to the mainstream language models and the mainstream worldview, basically. So, if you ask it how many genders there is, it'll tell you there's two. If you ask it, is inflation good or bad, it'll tell you inflation is bad by default. So you don't have to prompt your way into getting a more sane answer out of it. So that's sort of what we've done. We just open sourced that about a month ago, and that's out in the market. And now we've actually pivoted the AI business a little bit into applied AI instead of just the building of models. So that's like something that I haven't gone public with yet. But yeah, instead of I've become bearish on the language model space. I think most of it is fluff, and we can get into why I think that. But I also think, unpopular opinion, me being in the AI space, I think there's a massive AI winter around the corner. I think the whole thing's going to go to shit. And yeah, I'm kind of trying to move away from being a AI centric company to being a AI enabled business with everything that we've learned. So anyway, that's a bit of an intro.
Thank you. And yeah, that's really cool when it comes to the AI business, just how it's going to be like kind of blunt force as far as like what you're kind of looking for. Especially when I look at large language models, looking at Claude through Anthropic or even ChatGPT through OpenAI, like a lot of things are more of like your critical thinking skills or your prompt engineering skills to kind of fine tune your answers, especially if you have like one sentiment off or one language off or word, it's like it throws something completely off. So I like the your approach is where it's kind of more like blunt force as far as like having into that straight answer. But going back to the Bitcoin Times, you have authors or you have publicators that go onto the platform. Are there certain like criterias or certain things or topics that you kind of try to have them go on to talk about? Or like what does that vision look like when you have try to people on that platform?
Yeah, well, so it's not really a platform. It's, as I said, it's like it's a print journal, and it's distributed online as well. So we've got a decent sized audience there, like I think 20, 30,000 people or whatever. But it is it's basically, I mean, benevolent dictatorship. Like I select the writers who I think have something useful to say around a particular theme. So I kind of get a sense from the audience and the readers what the next year's theme should be. And then I sort of follow my intuition on what I think is trending. And like, for example, last year was the energy edition. And, there was a lot of FUD going on about, oh yeah, Bitcoin's boiling the oceans and, the world's going to end because we're mining Bitcoin, all this bullshit. So I decided to get some of the best people. So I got Brian Gitt, who's like literally one of the foremost authorities on nuclear power, small modular reactors, and stuff like that. And I got him to write a piece on, solving the energy crisis using nuclear, and how that relates back to Bitcoin. I had Gideon Powell, whose father was one of the wildcatters who built all the oil infrastructure actually in Texas. And, he's basically brought his background of oil together with Bitcoin. And they are building one of the biggest mining operations. And they're basically transforming Texas into one of the bastions of Bitcoin mining in the world. So I had him write a piece called The Infinite Nexus, which focuses on how human ingenuity is the ultimate limiter for innovation. It's not resources, it's not energy. Like we're never going to run out of molecules, we're never going to run out of energy. The only thing we're short on is ingenuity. So technically we could transform, and like there is unlimited natural resources, there is unlimited molecules and atoms out there to use. It's just a matter of what we can use. So his piece was fantastic. Who else wrote for this year? Marty Bent, from TFTC. So we had a bunch of that. So that's sort of my selection criteria. And this year we're doing the macro edition. So I'm gonna have Mark Moss, Lynn Alden, Preston Pish, Jeff Booth, who else was there? James Lavish. So a couple big names there. I think this will be one of the bigger editions that we publish.
That's really cool. And I never really think of that type of mindset when it comes to like how much ingenuity or difference can be made into that type of realm, especially when you talk about like that Texas oil chain. So that's really cool. And so when just as a viewer, if someone wanted to go into the Bitcoin Times, they just go to their website and subscribe to find these publications.
Yeah, they can subscribe, they can pick up. So the way what I do from a print standpoint is I print them as digital collectibles. Sorry, not digital, fucking hell. Physical collectibles.
Okay.
So no NFT, it's not digital or anything like that. It's like literally something you can hold in your hand. And I go basically over and above with the quality of the print. So it's like it's 14-point cover. Like you won't find a magazine like it. It's like heavy.
Oh wow.
And yeah, there's only 2,100 of them printed. So each edition is only printed 2,100 times. They're numbered on the back, so they're unique, and people buy them as a collectible. So they're a little pricey. They're like between 100, $200 a piece.
Right.
But they are the most beautiful piece of like, they're a blend of artwork, philosophy, literature, thinking, like, and yeah, there's sort of something that you want to buy and pass down to your kids later.
That's really cool. And so you have like a whole community just based on like the collection piece of its own too, and
Yeah,
especially the
correct.
history that kind of follows along with it. That's really cool. I never thought of that kind of like real world, and I'm not trying to tie it into NFTs, but not just like that real world kind of collection piece onto the storytelling. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So, kind of pivoting a little bit as far as like from Bitcoin Times, as far as what you may think on the whole marketplace on Bitcoin right now, how it's kind of trending to nearby all-time highs again. What do you think is the far as the market sentiment, or why do you think there could be such focus on Bitcoin now when like 6 months ago it was kind of like a lull or a dull?
I mean, this is markets, man. Like, Bitcoin is cyclical, and it's a seasonal thing. And the reason why it's seasonal is because psychology is seasonal. And as with any market, you like particularly something that's emergent, it'll go through a phase of extreme interest, where that interest is represented by the price, and the interest exceeds where the reality is, right? And then when it does so, it'll exceed, it'll get completely irrational until someone realizes that the promises made are beyond what is deliverable, and then the bubble pops, and you fall into the down cycle, then you move into despair, and then people lose complete hope, and then they lose interest, and then that is the necessary cleansing of the market. and people go from despair to apathy to non-interest. And finally, when you get to the point of no interest, when nobody gives a fuck anymore, that's when you are prepared for the next leg. And that's sort of where we are now, is fundamentally over the last God knows how many months, people just haven't given a shit about Bitcoin, which is fantastic. That's a good sign. And now slowly by slowly, there's some interest coming back in, but we still haven't seen real interest come back in. Like, we're still at the base of, in my opinion, the base of the bull market. So, there's a lot of upside to come, in my opinion.
And you don't think the happening or anything else like that had happened to play an effect, or
I mean, the halving always has an effect, but it's delayed. You know what I mean? So it's not something that'll have an immediate impact. It's the same every 4 years, right? So when you constrain the daily supply, it'll take some time for that to have an impact in the marketplace. And you got to think about it, like the actors in the market who are most affected by this are miners. It's not like they didn't know when the halvening was coming. Like, it was coming, it was around the corner. They knew, so they would have like built up a stockpile of Bitcoin beforehand, so that way they could help buffer that change. So it's going to take like 6 to 8 months for the impact of the supply constraint to have a effect on the market. And in my opinion, by the end of this year, we'll start to see that come to fruition. So there's a phase, there's a delay.
gotcha. And so besides like the happening, or even just like the shaving of like non-interest or people that are just kind of like riding the train, if you would, kind of like meme stocks or stuff like that, where do you think, as far as like the actual like projection may even go to? I mean, not to say like it's going to reach 100,000 just tomorrow or anything else, but like what do you think is ever, like what are the new things that you're going to see with Bitcoin coming, maybe a year, 5 years from now, etc.?
I mean, okay, so there's a couple of things I'd say. Price wise, I think this cycle will probably see a couple hundred K, maybe a little more, who knows. Um, I think some of the things that'll come up with Bitcoin, like I wrote an article about, I think it was a year ago now, maybe a little longer, called the three generations theory. And I recommend, like, I'll give you the link. I recommend everyone have a look at this. It basically breaks Bitcoin down into three broad phases, which are each generational, because that's how we need to look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not a 10-year project, 20-year project. Bitcoin's a multi-100-year project, right? And for it to really embed itself into civilization, it needs to go through a couple of phases. Phase one, which is, let's just call it between 2010 and 2030, right? That's phase one. That is the speculative stage. That is when Bitcoin is being priced and people are understanding that this is an economic phenomenon. And that phase is fundamentally driven by people who had already come of some sort of age prior to Bitcoin's existence. So kind of like the me and yous of the world. I assume you're probably 30 or somewhere thereabouts. I'm 35. I was born late 80s. I grew up before Bitcoin. So for me, I've got this sort of paradigm that is 1 foot in Bitcoin, 1 foot in the old world, right? So we are fundamentally always, psychologically speaking, comparing Bitcoin with the status quo. And the status quo is the US dollar. So therefore, we are always measuring Bitcoin against the dollar, which implies that there is a speculative phase. We are pricing Bitcoin during this phase. Move to the next phase, 2030 to 2050. There will be kids coming of age who were born 2009, 2010 onwards, who don't know of a world without Bitcoin. They grew up with Bitcoin. They can't perceive, they can't fathom of a time before Bitcoin. They will look at Bitcoin completely differently. They will see it as, it's just money. It's just a tool. It's a thing. So we will move from the speculative phase into the infrastructure phase, where Bitcoin will start to become embedded in applications. It'll become native internet money. It'll become the thing that people just use naturally. It's like, why the fuck would you go and open up a bank account and have, telescopes up your butthole just to, have permission from the bank to use your own money, when you can download a wallet, send someone money with no sort of questions asked, cross-border, wherever you want, instantly, right? So we will move into the infrastructure phase. I believe, things like Noster, for anyone who hasn't looked at it yet, definitely, I recommend you go down that rabbit hole. But Noster is going to fundamentally transform the way identity and communication works online, and you couple Nostr with Bitcoin, you will transform the social layer and the identity layer and the reviews layer and everything online. So coming back to my point, second phase, infrastructure phase, that'll shift the focus on Bitcoin, but it'll integrate it into the world, and this is where mining and energy infrastructure, all this sort of stuff all comes into play. And then 2050 to 2070, the third generation, that's when Bitcoin, quote unquote, mass adopts. That's when you'll have kids coming of age who their fucking grandparents, me, you, were the ones who pioneered Bitcoin, but it's so fucking far back that it's not even a question anymore. Like it's not, oh, should I buy Bitcoin? It's like it's part of society at that point. And they will once again view Bitcoin completely differently. So to sort of like, I never really focus on the, what's in the next couple of years and stuff like that. At least, for the stage we're in right now, the only real difference over the next couple of years is that Bitcoin is going to start really transitioning out of speculation. But for it to do that, it needs to reach a critical mass of market saturation in price terms. And I believe that'll be somewhere between 250,000 to a million, somewhere in that range. And at that point, we've got sort of like the green light. And it's not like a green light, someone's going to give it to us. I mean, like it'll be economically significant enough that it is just the thing that builders, developers, creators, and everything choose to integrate into their applications.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, everyone that I usually talk to, especially who are not so much into the crypto space, mostly talk about as far as like price or anything else. I mostly get into the whole like projects as far as like, you look at ordinals or any other projects that are integrating Bitcoin into the systems versus actually looking at the monetary price. Because it goes back to what you were just saying as far as like we're pricing in Bitcoin with USD or anything else, people look at it as like some type of like mid-area like forex trading to allow them to kind of exchange money back and forth. I look more as like the actual project value of like what people are building on that platform or on that chain, on chain or off chain, and going from there. What type of projects do you think that you may see when it comes to Bitcoin, or what projects are you kind of bullish on to see on other chains?
I mean, I would actually put all the NFTs, all that sort of shit in the same bucket as speculation, because that's all the speculative era of Bitcoin. Like I don't see any real utility there outside of like people don't buy an NFT because they want to like because they really give a fuck about the artwork. Like, we got to be frank here. Like people buy it so they can hopefully flip it and make some money out of it. Like really that's it. And that implies speculation. There's no fine art in the NFT space. Like, people aren't buying a Van Gogh or a Da Vinci or anything like that. They're just buying shit so they can flip it. So I don't think that qualifies as the utility phase.
Mhm.
Where I see utility is things like the Noster protocol, which is, it doesn't have a token. It's not, it's not trying to look to print its own money or any of that sort of stuff. It's just the identity protocol, which enables us to push the social graph down to the protocol layer and outside of the platform layer that sits on top of the web. With that, and the fact that Noster is basically, it's Bitcoin native, means that you can do things like, if you look at Primal, which is basically like a Twitter clone on Noster, instead of me just liking a post, I can zap a post. And what a zap is, I can send lightning payments to that person, and I can show that I got some value out of that post. And then that can transform how the algorithms work that have traditionally been more like clickbaity to more like creator creator incentivized. Like the crowd can directly incentivize people. So imagine on Twitter, for example, I did a great post and I got 16,000 likes. How much did I earn out of that? Fucking nothing. Now, Elon's trying to do something with like impressions and pay people out and all this sort of shit. Why do that when people can literally zap you money directly with Bitcoin from fucking anywhere in the world? Like, so Bitcoin kind of transforms the social layer of the world. And that's where I see utility in Bitcoin, not so much in in the stuff that's being built, particularly that is like more speculative in nature. I'm sure there's other things, but I don't know, I think there's there's so much more like, we're what I said earlier about like moving away from a pure AI business into applied AI. We're building like a travel platform or a travel network that is kind of like you can imagine TripAdvisor meets Instagram. So like one of the problems with travel today is if you want to travel, you're on TripAdvisor, you're on Google Reviews, you're on Booking.com, and you're doing tactics there. You're trying to find out where to stay, you're looking at reviews, all this sort of shit. But problem is the reviews don't mean anything. Like what does a fucking review from some no-namer that I don't follow, that I don't care about? Like why is their review relevant to me? If some 45-year-old soccer mom has reviewed a sushi store, a sushi restaurant, like my taste is different. So it's like you've got like the whole review travel section is broken. Then on the flip side, you've got people on Instagram bookmarking stuff, following places, all this sort of stuff. But I can't book a hotel. I can't stay at a place. I can't rate one of those restaurants. I can't do any of that. Like imagine if you could bring the two together. And that's what something like Noster enables. So we're trying to, kind of blend social with travel. So the utility with the travel utility with the social utility. And then within that, integrate Bitcoin payments, but make it a standard, make it the way people, do commerce on the thing. So that way you don't have payment processes, you don't have, PayPals and Stripes and all those dickheads. And you fundamentally build something new that couldn't exist before because you have a identity layer and you have a monetary layer that are open and accessible. So I can just build on it. So that's the kind of stuff for me personally that excites me. Less the speculatory stuff. And that's not to downplay the speculation stuff. Like it's got to happen. People got to put capital in. People have to lose capital in that process by making bad bets. Some have to make money. Ultimately for me, that just means that Bitcoin is going to attract more and more and more and more capital. So that's a net positive. But yeah, like to tie it back into into the opportunity, I think the infrastructure is going to be built in that direction using things like Noster, not so much trying to build on the layers on Bitcoin.
Makes sense. And especially for something like Noster, having something on the blockchain where you can have validators on there to show there's no like spoofs or spams on like fake reviews or fake places like where you may see on Yelp or TripAdvisor.
Well,
Like
there's
having
actually
that.
no blockchain with Nostr, so that's the beautiful thing about it. So I
Oh,
don't think blockchains scale. So that's the biggest problem with all of the general crypto space is that blockchains fundamentally do not scale, and blockchains fundamentally have their own economic system that is distinct from Bitcoin. So that will mean that ultimately they fail because economically they can't compete with Bitcoin. So what Nostr is really intelligent. Is it's just uh, it's a flat topography where anybody can run a relay and people's identity is just an npub and an nsec, so a public-private key pair. So you can create as many of those as you want because there's more public-private key pairs than there is atoms in the universe. So you can, create one and that's your identity. You might want to have one tied to your real identity. You might want to have a NIM, whatever, doesn't matter. And you can just join, like your identity allows you to interact with any Nostr enabled platform or product or social service where you own the identity. And it doesn't need a blockchain. That means it's way more fucking scalable. There is no, like, it leverages Bitcoin as money, so that way there's no competition there where it has to build its own blockchain or its own token or its own fucking economy. That stuff's all out the window. And that's why like the Bitcoin Nostr connection is so much more interesting. And the way you solve spoofing and all that sort of stuff is once again not with the blockchain. You solve it based on the social graph. So people don't follow bots, right? People follow people they know, or they follow those kind of things. So you can build social scores off that. So you can build a web of trust that actually functions without needing any of the blockchain stuff, without needing any of the tokens, without needing any of that sort of stuff. And that's fucking interesting. Doing another blockchain and trying to like, you know, Bitcoin was unique and Bitcoin's blockchain makes sense because it's got its own economic model. There is absolutely no reason, in my opinion, to build another blockchain outside of Bitcoin because economically nothing can compete with Bitcoin and never will. Bitcoin's just going to crush it. So you're building a blockchain which the existence of the blockchain is predicated on the success of the token whose economic model is competing against Bitcoin, which is never going to work. So it's like it's this sort of broken circular logic, which is, fundamentally why I'm, not interested in any of the crypto stuff anymore. Like I literally Bitcoin and Noster is like the perfect mix. Bitcoin handles the blockchain, it's the money, it's incorruptible, it's uncensorable, it's unstoppable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Noster is identity, social graph at the protocol layer, open, unstoppable, because anybody can run a relay and every relay just propagates out to the network.
Wow. Should have asked those earlier, but why so convinced? Why so bullish on Bitcoin? And how did you get first introduced into it?
I mean, I stumbled into Bitcoin 2015, 2016,
Oh, so before that
when
2017 crash, yeah.
yeah, quite a bit before that. And you know, I had a it was funny through it was just through this degenerate friend who was buying shit off the dark net, and he introduced me, and I was like, and I'd heard about it because I was a gold and silver bug in 2010, 2011.
Mm.
And I was like, oh shit, is that Bitcoin thing still around? And as I started digging, I realized. And I mean, for me, why so bullish on Bitcoin? It's like the most important language on the planet, the thing that makes the world function is money. Like money is the language of value. Money transcends the language that we're speaking now, which is English. Like money is the thing that makes the world function. You cannot have civilization without a money. And why is Bitcoin better money? Well, money has to have certain attributes. It's got to be divisible. It's got to be portable. It's got to be fungible. It's got to be uh, uninflatable, or the best way to say that, it's got to be like scarce or hard or unforgeable. Bitcoin has all of these attributes, and nothing else has the attributes. And that's a function of a number of reasons. One is that Bitcoin was the first thing to come out at a time when nobody thought something like this was possible. You cannot launch Bitcoin today. The cat is out of the bag. Like that was a one-time moment. So it's called like a 0 to 1 moment. Everything else that's come after is a 1 to n moment. So it happened once, and that was sort of like the ultimate genesis. And fundamentally, Satoshi did the right thing by disappearing, which means now Bitcoin cannot be turned off, it cannot be stopped. And the consensus rules, because there's too many people involved now, you cannot get consensus to make a change. And Bitcoin's fundamental key sort of like attribute or selling point is the fact that in a world where anything can be changed, Bitcoin is the one thing that can't be changed. And money being the granite upon which you build civilization needs to be fucking unchangeable. I need to know if I store my Bitcoin in a wallet that 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, that exact same Bitcoin will be available to whoever has the keys, and the consensus rules will not have changed. The economic rules will not have changed. It's still 21 million, blah, 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 right? Bitcoin's the only thing that provides that guarantee. I don't care what you compared with it. Like if Vitalik, like, Ethereum doesn't compare. If Vitalik dies tomorrow, Ethereum is fucked, hands down, because there is a figurehead for it. So nothing else offers that guarantee. Nothing else offers that protection. Nothing else. So with that, like you've got perfect money. Bitcoin is the thing that happened. Bitcoin is special because it's unchangeable. Everything else is changeable. You can change all of these other chains. And because money is the biggest market of all, like everything, like imagine the fucking sofa in your background, the TV, the computer you're talking on, the car outside, every single stock, every single car, real estate, everything is measured in money. So money is literally half of the global economy. So, in 100 years, one Bitcoin will probably be enough to buy you an entire city, like multiple billions of dollars. So that's how, like, that's the market cap of Bitcoin. And it won that race already because the cat's out of the bag. It's like a one-time event. So that's why I'm bullish, and that's also why I see Bitcoin as such an important thing, and why I personally like, sure, there's lots of money to be made in the short term by trading meme coins and trading other coins because they're smaller, and you might make a delta between the like it might outperform Bitcoin in the short term, but ultimately, like, everything is going to zero against Bitcoin, because ultimately people need a place to store their money that is not going to change the rules from under them.
It kind of goes back to what I was mentioned earlier, as far as like how we price Bitcoin to money, as far as USD or anything else like that. If we know the market cap is at 21 million, right? As far as, or not market cap, as far as Bitcoin's being produced,
Supply cap. Yep.
supply gap, yes. Thank you. And so let's say, let's just say hypothetically, I'm not trying to like snare you down to like like this answer. I'm not trying to like, let's just say we're getting close to the supply cap, right? How is it even possible at a time for like governments or anyone or exchanges to where if I sell like one Bitcoin at that time to provide that amount of money to cover the cost of selling that Bitcoin from that time or anything else like that? You know what I mean? Like how is it that even possible to like get that much more than what more than some economies can even have as
Yeah, I
at
mean,
like that time?
yeah, like by the time we get there, we got to remember it's 120 years away. There won't be a US dollar anymore. There won't be like you're not going to be exchanging Bitcoin for another fucking currency. That time is that ship will have sailed. Like
This will just
if
be the
people
golden
don't
standard.
exactly, it'll be so the only thing you're going to trade for that whole Bitcoin would be your fucking country, basically. Like that's like or your city or a building or something like that, right? So like this is I don't think people understand the magnitude of Bitcoin's size and potential. Like it's everything in the world and everything that will ever exist divided by 21 million. That's the number. So I don't know how fucking big that number is. I don't know if that means that one Bitcoin will be worth in today's nominal terms $100 billion. I don't fucking know. Like it's massive. Like it's beyond comprehension how much one Bitcoin will be worth. So in a century or two from now, like the idea that people used to transact Bitcoin directly, like will be unfathomable. We're going to be operating on abstracted layers. And no way, like the Bitcoin on the base chain is going to move for a normal transaction. It's just not going to happen.
No, it makes sense. It just kind of like for me, it's just crazy to think about just like when it comes to that type of world or situations to where like that will become a thing. Like if I wanted to sell one or anything else, not for money, it's just like how at that point of time it's like so much. It's like how can one cash out or how can one fathom like the
No, you don't
value of what
cash
that
out. You just
is
buy goods and
there?
services. That's the whole point of money, right? The whole point of
Yeah.
money is like, if I have money, I want to buy a property, I want to buy a car, I want to buy whatever. Like you just directly purchase it. There is no cashing out. Like the idea. So once again, we're in this first paradigm where the exchange matters because you're trying to exchange for something. So we're monetizing. In 20, 30, 50 years, however long this is going to take, there will be no exchange. You just use the money directly and you exchange for goods and services the same way as you do with your US dollars today. So Bitcoin right now is a speculative instrument, but it's evolving into a money. And you don't go and like, you don't spend your time like swapping your fucking dollars for, Brazilian reals because you think the price is going to go up or down. I mean, some people obviously do that with trillions, but like those we're moving into an age of the human race where that stuff is behind us. Like the idea that I always laugh. It's like in a couple hundred years they'll look back and they'll be like, wow, humans were so stupid. They were like literally swapping toilet paper fiat money, created by one government, for paper fiat money created by another government. What a fucking waste of time, energy, and money. Like when I go, like for example, I live in Brazil these days, and I have paper US dollars. I need to swap it for paper Brazilian reals. I'm like, what a fucking stupidity. Like I could just like directly pay for something with Bitcoin, but unfortunately we're not at that stage yet. So yeah, in the future, um, you will just whatever you need, you would just buy it with your Bitcoin. That's it. And that's why you want to collect as much as possible now, because if you have a lot, and you secure it right, nobody's ever going to take it. You have generational wealth. The purchasing power is going to continue to increase. Like you are literally putting yourself in front of everybody else, and that's a smart thing to do.
I got two more questions for you. One,
Hit me.
as far as like how that's going to be like the golden standard for everything to be used, how are economies going to function just using just one mass adoption of a monetary system of just using a Bitcoin standard? A lot of countries depend on their own currencies for their own control and spending and et cetera. How do you think, or at least, I mean, this may be a big question. I'm not saying that you're not smart enough to answer, but what is it that you may think that economies or governments are going to start saying like we need to all have this universal, basic
Yeah,
income? Just
the current this is why Bitcoin matters is that the current economic model, the current political model, the current nation state model is a complete fuck up. It's bankrupt. It's broken. Like if the U.S. government was a business, it would have gone fucking bankrupt 100 times by now. So by printing money, you are destroying your own economy. So therefore, what's going to happen and this is not going to happen by their choice. Like governments don't get to choose here. Reality is stronger than any government. Governments are are temporary things on a grander timeline. You know, mathematics is going to exist long before the US government, is going to exist long after the US government. So Bitcoin lives in the realm of mathematics and physics. The US government lives in the realm of words and fucking promises that at maximum can last a couple hundred years. So what's going to happen is the nation state model is going to have to change. It'll have to move towards nation states operating in a manner that is economically feasible. And I don't believe that will look like the current model that we have, these large scale countries with shitty fucking politics and complete fuck up of an economic sort of model. They will have to get smaller, they'll have to get more nimble, and they're going to have to operate as service providers. So I don't know if you're familiar with Balaji's sort of network state idea, but that's sort of the closest sort of concept here is, and I would say the earliest sort of representative of this is Bukele. He's turning El Salvador into a place that is run by a strong leader with he's got a fucking economic mind on him. He's running the company. He's running the country like a company, like a business. And what's going to happen is in 10 years' time, El Salvador is going to be a paradise. The same thing is sort of what happened with Dubai. Dubai is run by a family who has treated the place like a business. So it's going to force more and more and more nation states to operate in that manner. And that's a net positive because citizens then become customers, not fucking cattle. Because at the moment, the whole world operates like, you know, you're born, you got to pay 40, 50, 60, 70% taxes to a fucking bunch of monkeys in the government who can't, who literally just waste it. They steal half of it and they waste the other half and nothing happens. So they literally erode the structure of civilization. Whereas you have a sound money standard, you force economic sanity onto any territory that is operating with that economic standard. And the territories that choose not to, they're just going to go bankrupt because nobody's going to trust their money. So they'll hyperinflate, go bankrupt, and someone's going to have to come and take over.
That's wild. And yeah, I believe you're right too when it comes to like El Salvador and even Dubai, other places that are adopting Bitcoin as like their main stream of currency. I think they're the ones that are going to be the forefront of all this too. Um, Now I know we're getting close to time. Just one last question. It's probably just preference, but I'm just really curious on your standpoint, especially when you look at, you know, your generations to have your Bitcoin or anything else you may give them or anything else. Are you a cold wallet guy or hot storage guy?
Oh, obviously cold, man. That's the thing. Like I've got my cold storage set up so convoluted that even I can't touch the shit. So like, you know, there's most of it's going to go to my kids and it'll go to their kids, et cetera, et cetera. Like I view Bitcoin across a time span of 500 years, not my lifetime. So, you know, it's set up in a way that, yeah, it's basically untouchable.
True. Yeah, I just to even get personal to me. I don't have cold storage. I'm more hot, but I have it all encrypted, cloud backup, and written down, PO box, all that good stuff. But the reason why I myself are just not into much cold storage is because I feel like input connection can break when charging it, or locked out, or software corruption does it wrong. That's just like my paranoia and stuff. But there's probably going to be ways of going around that or fixing it. I don't know what your thoughts may be on that.
I mean, like Bitcoin cold storage is the only thing that is safe because you have your seed phrase and your seed phrase is just mathematics and you can always derive your keys from that. So you don't need a wallet. You don't need shit. Like a wallet is just a device that allows you to interact with the chain if you need to use it. But see, I don't spend my Bitcoin. I don't use it. I just save it. And
Oh,
then I have particular hot wallets where if I need to spend Bitcoin, I just put it in there and then I spend it. And that's usually a Lightning wallet or something like that. But I rarely touch that. So like my stuff is secured in such a way that I don't need to touch it. But I know that in 50 years, if I want to touch it, I just rederive the keys from the paper or the metal or whatever the way I've stored it
mm,
is set up. And that gives me so much certainty. Like I know that there is no power in the fucking universe that can touch my Bitcoin. Like that's a powerful feeling.
no, true. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was curious, but yeah, now it's like me thinking of like getting a ledger or treasure or any one of those. But
I mean, you don't even need those. You know, like I said, they're things that allow you to interact with the blockchain. You know, fundamentally, what it is, it's about how you store your mnemonic, your seed phrase. That's the thing. And there's
yeah,
many ways you can do that. Like you might want to split up the 24 words into, you know, two 12-word chunks and then you store them in different parts of the world or something like that, you might want to get, you might want to get one ledger, one Trezor, and then you might want to set up a multi-sig. Although multi-sig is a little bit more advanced, and a lot of people fuck that up, so that might not be advisable. But there's the whole point here is to think about, like, it just depends on your time horizon. Like, if your goal is to just sort of trade and fuck around and all that sort of stuff, then yeah, having cold storage is just inconvenient.
Yeah.
But yeah, my goal is not to trade. Like, I I see the potential of Bitcoin, and all I want to do is collect as much of it as I can before the rest of the world wakes up. And that's just a smart move. Like, imagine if you could go back 5,000 years when everybody was still using seashells and stones for money, and you found this yellow shiny stone, and you looked at it, you're like, oh, this is cool. Maybe I should start collecting this. And then you tried to like buy something, food for it or something, with it. And, people look at it like, the fuck is this yellow shiny rock? Like, I don't need it. And you're like, yeah, but it's fungible. It's, divisible, this sort of stuff. And you're like, get the fuck out of here. But, that yellow shiny rock turned out to be gold. And imagine you were able to collect it before the rest of the world realized it would become money. That chunk of gold that was worthless would have, 1,000 years later bought you entire kingdoms. That's where we are with Bitcoin now. But instead of taking 5,000 years, which is what it took gold to monetize, it's probably going to take 100 years for Bitcoin to monetize in the same capacity.
Sure. So yeah, might as well just have people just hodl and just kind of just hope for the best.
Collect. That's the thing. Just collect the best money on the planet. You're ahead of the game.
Cool. All right. That's all I got right now. Thank you, Alec. I appreciate it. Where can people follow you, listen more? And you have your own website, I think you have, with people that can follow you as far as the Bitcoin Times and other pages. Yeah,
I've got a link tree. If people go to my link tree, it's just linktree.com/Svetsky, my surname, SVETSKI. I'm most active on Twitter and on Noster these days. So if people, there's multiple applications they can sign up to Noster with, whether it's Primal or Highlighter or Damus or whatever. The beauty of the Noster network, it doesn't matter which client you use, you'll see everything. So if people want to follow me there, they can find it. But yeah, all of my links are in my link tree. That's probably the best way to go about it.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.